Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our latest episode of CineMasochism here on the Movie Crusaders channel. I'm Brian Michaels. With me, as always, is my co-host, Sean Wasserkrug. Sean, you picked this week's movie. How are you feeling about this one?
It's weird. I was not prepared to have the feelings that I have for this movie when I first heard about this film. Now, what's weird is that obviously you guys know I was a professional wrestler for 14 years, and I always try my best to watch movies with wrestlers in it. Except for Roddy Piper for some reason. I don't know why. I like Roddy Piper. I do. But I don't think I've ever seen They Live all the way through. I think I've only ever watched
Really?
I've seen I think all the important scenes, but I don't think I've ever actually watched it from beginning to end. But and it could have been age thing for me because like I think it was more or less like I was at that age where I didn't start watching like wrestler movies probably until Hogan started doing it. So Piper was right before that to a point. But yeah, this is a movie that definitely fell through the cracks. I never heard of, and I was at work one night. I was listening to this wrestling podcast. Anyone who knows, it's called Wrestling with Freddie. It's basically Freddie Prinze Jr. and his buddy talking wrestling because Freddie Prinze Jr. used to write for WWE for a few years, so it's kind of like him talking about current wrestling stuff and back when he was a writer for SmackDown for like a few years. And his co-host is a comedian, Jeff Dye, who's actually a really funny dude. And he started describing this film. And I'm just sitting at work and I stopped like dead in my tracks. And I'm just listening to him describe this movie. And in my head, I'm going, this isn't a real film. There's no way this is a real film. And he goes, I can't remember what the title is. He's like, but it's got Piper and it's got, and I'm leaving out the parts that he was talking about where he describes the film, even though we're gonna do it here in a little bit. And he's describing this, I'm like, this is not a real film. And I immediately texted Brian, and I was like, Brian, I have a movie for CineMasochism. It's starring Roddy Piper. It's about this, this, and this. I go, I've never heard of this film. And of course, Brian being Brian, oh yeah, I've seen that. It's like, of course you have. And he goes, is it this? And I was like, that's it. I was like, we need to talk about this movie because this movie sounds perfect for this show. And so we kind of had like as a placeholder episode because we usually try, or Brian tries to, if we can, pick a movie that's connected to a movie that's coming out that week. Like last week was Vampire's Kiss with Renfield. Week before that was Super Mario. So we didn't really have anything for this upcoming week with Evil Dead because there's no real bad Evil Dead movie. So he's like, you know what, Sean, do you want to talk about Hell Comes to Frogtown? I was like, yes, I do, because I really want to see what this movie's all about. And yeah, I went in fully expecting to go like full on like Tiptoes and Vampire's Kiss all over this movie, but that wasn't what happened. This is different. This is very, very different. By the end of it, what did I say, Brian? What did I say by the end of this movie? Do you remember?
I don't know which part you're talking about, no.
That I was like, dude, I actually really enjoyed this film. I was like, I was having so much fun with this movie. And now it's not the best movie in the world. No. But for the time frame that it was out, and for just the bad shit insanity craziness this movie was, I didn't consider this a stinker film. It's a cult film. It's 100% a cult film. But I had fun with this.
And that's like we say every week. That's what this show is. There's going to be movies you watch that are horrible, and there's movies we watch that are just boring. And there's movies like we watch, like this one, which they look like they're just low budget, horrible, trashy movies, but there is an entertainment value in them, and we end up really enjoying some of these movies. And this turned out to be one of those.
Yeah, we definitely had a fun time watching this, and not in the ironic way, but just generally like.
This is a movie that it is not. It's not Super Mario Brothers. It's not trying to be a good movie and comes out as like this low budget bad trash movie. This is a movie that knows what it is and knows how to play it right. Knows how to play that with that wink and that smile, like, oh, we know this is just fun trash.
And even then, it's like having someone like Roddy Piper play this character. Piper's so good at like making shit into gold because he's got that grin and that little the hair kind of thing, and just he has that charisma.
We were
And
talking about how it's surprised that he didn't go on to do more because honestly,
yeah,
before this, basically, this came out the same year as They Live. These both came out in 1988, and obviously one was a theatrical release. This one, I don't think got released to theaters. They went straight to video. I can't even find an actual release date. It just says January '88. Um, but they both came out the same year, and really, he didn't make any major films after this. He showed up in a lot of straight to video stuff when he got into the '90s, things like that. When he started wrestling less, he started doing a lot of the straight to video schlock and
mhm,
movies. And before this, he'd only like had cameos in like this movie called Body Slam. We basically appears essentially himself
yeah.
and things like that. But he does have that kind of charisma that would have translated very well into a
And
movie career. And not
honestly,
maybe not always as the star like this, but he
no.
would have made great villains. He would make great, sidekicks, things like that. He could have made buddy cop films. We had this whole conversation while watching the movie.
Yeah, I was like, he would have been a great henchman as
Mhm.
well. Just that he honestly, you know who he would have been great as. Not to take away from his actor because his actor was good in the role, but he could have been Joker's number one guy in '89's Batman, and just had this because he would have fit perfectly with Joker's like shtick kind of thing.
And that's Tracy
And
Walter, by the way, Bob the Goon.
thank
He's
you,
in
thank
everything.
you.
Yeah.
But because like even around this time, Piper Piper is one of the greatest wrestling villains ever. But at this time, he was still wrestling, but WWE wasn't really using him. He didn't really start to get used again until like 90 to like 93. And so he had this window where he really could have.
Yeah,
And,
'cause he
and
was
it was
huge when it first took off, like, with WrestleMania 1 and 2, he was huge, and then
yeah,
he kinda cooled off, and then, like you said, came back later.
it wasn't until like WrestleMania 6 that he really started to kind of wake back up again and start to become relevant. So he had that 3 years where he could have broken off and actually just done this. And I honestly think it would have been better for him because
Mhm.
his charisma and his ability to just sell shit into something enjoyable, especially in the 80s, he would have found a beautiful little niche, and he could have actually made that a career. Had it been today, he probably 100% would have done it,
Oh, absolutely,
and it would have
absolutely.
worked. It would have
Because now
worked
people have seen
immensely.
wrestlers successfully make that jump, and actually, I wanna say he was, because this is before No Holds Barred, so he's really the first wrestler to star in a major film, I think.
Well, to star, yeah, because there are other wrestlers that were
Well, yeah,
in
like
prior.
Hogan appeared in Rocky 3 and things like
Well,
that, but
you also got like George the Animal Steel and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, no, star in his own movie, yes,
yeah.
100%. Piper was
It
probably one
kinda
of the
opened the
very, very
door, I
first.
think. Let's get the facts out of the way. Hell Comes to Frogtown, released in January 1988, maybe theaters, maybe video. If it was theaters, there's no box office information out there, so I think it might have been straight to video. It had a budget of $1.5 million. Honestly, production value in this, better than Super Mario Brothers. Just
We
saying.
said that while watching it. Like the
Not
frog
just
people.
not just the talking toad heads, I mean the all across the board. This
Yeah,
movie, it doesn't look like, a big budget movie, but it looks better than Super Mario Brothers did.
it 100% does. It 100% does.
Yeah, it, has an IMDb score of average of 5.5 out of 10, Letterboxd average of 2.8 out of 5, and Rotten Tomatoes, this is what surprised me, critics score 56%, audience score 46%. I find that very odd.
I feel like people weren't, and like I said, in the critic score and the audience scores, we've had this conversation on this show before, where it's all over the
First
place.
of all, we don't
Because
believe in Rotten
people
Tomatoes at all. I'm just
We
giving you the
don't. We
numbers.
just throw it in to
Yeah.
throw it in. But yeah, it's people's expectations not matching what the critics said, or vice versa, or the critics taking shit too seriously, and the audience score wanting to dive in. Like this is the same people who thought Kung Pao was good. No,
Yeah.
absolutely
I'm
not.
actually more surprised by the critic score being as high as it is, because this is the kind of thing that critics would
Was
trash.
you?
Unless the problem is Rotten Tomatoes, though, involves current, it's not just as of release. So, like, all of the YouTube channels and websites and things like that that have done reviews these in the years since then, who are maybe specialized in these kind of old, campy, fun '80s
Mhm.
movies, are giving it positive reviews, but raising that score. I think that's probably a big part of it.
Well, it's like even still, like you go to like because I did this right before we start the episode. I was going through Wiki and I was reading stuff on it because when you search Hell to Frog comes to Frogtown, it says film series, and I was like, well, are there others? And so I clicked on it, I was trying to read, but then I obviously got to this one and I was reading critical responses, and a lot of them were like, for the 80s, like, hey, it's another B movie sci-fi 80s film. What's to go wrong? Or, hey, it's professional wrestler Roddy Piper going against frog people while diddling women. That sounds like a great concept or fun concept. So even everyone back then was just like, hey, for what it is, it's good. It's not, going to be Terminator or anything, but for what they're doing, they did good. It's so different than like Tammy and the T-Rex for you and I. They knew what movie they were making.
Yes.
And they utilized their time correctly and made a funny, memorable shit film.
Yeah, this is a movie. I first saw this movie. There was back in the late 80s and early 90s, there was a TV show called USA Up All Night on like Friday and Saturday nights on the USA Network. It was hosted at times by Gilbert Gottfried and at times by a woman named Rhonda Shear. But basically, they would host the show and they would show these movies, and they would all be like these bad, quote unquote, bad, like cheesy movies, all the 80s to 90s, a lot of straight to video kind of things, a lot of the kind of movies that we would talk about here on CineMasochism. And this is the kind of movie they'd show, but this is the kind of movie that it's cheesy, but it's fun and it knows what it is. And it's like, now they did make sequels to this, like Sean referenced to. There's one called Frogtown 2, Meaner and Greener, also known as Return to Frogtown. There was one that's called The Toad Warrior, which then got re-released as Max Hell Frog Warrior. But those don't involve Roddy Piper. And from what I've never seen them, but from what I can tell, they were not good. So we want to acknowledge those. So Hell Comes to Frogtown basically is about this man played by Roddy Piper. This is the post-apocalyptic future.
The concept of this film is utterly ridiculous, and that's the whole reason why we started talking about this movie in the first place.
I'll start with the Letterboxd synopsis of it. Hell is the name of the hero of our story. He's a prisoner of the women who now run the USA after a nuclear biological war. Results of the war that mutants have evolved, and the human race is in danger of extinction due to infertility. Hell is given the task of helping in the rescue of a group of fertile women from the harem of a mutant leader resembling a frog. Hell cannot escape since he has a bomb attached to his private parts, which will detonate if he strays more than a few hundred yards from his guard. So basically what it is, Roddy Piper, he plays Sam Hell, who is a man who's been arrested for sexual assault. He apparently has this long string of people he's known for impregnating just women after women, which is what they need. That's the biggest weapon in winning the war in this world, is to reproduce. It's to make numbers. And he apparently is super fertile. So basically they get a hold of this guy and they say, we are going to, you can stay out of jail, but what you have to do is you have to come with us. And basically your job is going to be to have sex with lots of women. And we have these fertile women. You got to help save them so you can impregnate them all. There's your plot.
Which, like at first, when they bring this up to him, we're like, dude, you just won the fucking lottery. Like, you could go to jail, or you can hang out with these two attractive women and go bang other chicks and get them pregnant, and you don't have to worry about being their dad or anything like that. Your job is to go out and fuck. And we're like, yes, please. Can I sign up for that right now? Like, sure. Unshackle me, please. But then there's a lot of different things they add to it.
Well, let's start by putting a different shackle on him.
Yes.
But first of all, let's just get out of the way that, yes, the hero of our story is apparently a convicted. Someone in the movie actually refers to him as convicted rapist, but they just say sexual assault.
But then, like, as the story goes, because we were even saying this, it's like they're adding a lot of sympathy to Piper in this film, but isn't he a rapist? But then it's like, is he though? Because it's like we never hear from the woman. It's her father who's mad, who claims a sexual assault. Her father's a cop, and Piper had sex with his daughter and got her pregnant, and so he's being arrested for sexual assault. So
we don't know that it was unwilling.
He may not have been, but that's how it's portrayed.
But on the surface, your hero is yeah. So that's our hero of the story. And Roddy is perfect for this movie because he doesn't give a shit about authority. He doesn't give a shit. He's not doing this for the nobility of saving the human race. He's just like, well, I want to stay out of jail and I want to have sex. So, okay, I'll go along with this, which I can't blame him at all for that.
Anything for my country.
Yeah. Now, as far as let's walk it through this, Sean, you picked the movie. I'm going to let you walk us through this movie. Do you want to go through the entire movie, or do you want to just like hit on points of it? Because I don't really have like point by point the entire film. Like
I'll do best I can. Well, so first things first is he signs this contract
whatever it is, yeah.
Allows it, which of course he didn't read it because
who reads contracts?
Exactly. No one reads the terms and conditions. But basically, he gets put in this like crotch chastity belt. This is like property of something government, and it's got a red dot on it. Which first thing Brian and I went through was like, that is incredibly uncomfortable. That is going to chafe.
And he
And
immediately starts like
I was like,
scratching
how are you
himself.
going to
And, yeah,
pee in that thing? What if you got to take a crap? Like, what do you do? And they just go, there's a flap.
there's a
It's like,
flap.
is there a flap for the butt? Like, because
Apparently.
what happens if he's got to take a shit? And so we're like, the whole concept of it, because A, just looks uncomfortable as hell. It's not like and I know Brian hates the movie, but like the chastity belt from Men in Tights, which actually just looks like underwear with steel looking with a lock and key. This is a bulky ass looking thing that looks like he's gonna have to walk like he's riding a horse, because there's no way you can walk normal with this thing. It's just not possible.
I mean,
And
well, first of all, it's supposed to be metal. It looks like what it is, which is like a hardened rubber, but it's like mechanically locked. And I'm thinking, well, he has this flap, but if he can open this flap anytime he wants, then what's the point of having it? But then we
yeah,
find out it has explosives in it that
yeah,
will.
exactly. And so, but it's the other thing too is like, if he's supposed to be having sex with women with this thing still on, that's not going to be comfortable for the woman.
How does that work exactly? Yeah.
I don't know, because it's not like it's like super tight on him to the point where it's like, oh, it's like underwear. This thing's bulky out, almost like a cup. So it's like he either has to be, big, or they're gonna be rubbing off on this thing more than him. This is the movie, guys. You're gonna have to just ride along this wave with us. So we get all that, and then you find out that this thing not only has explosives in it to blow up his junk if he goes too far or tries to attack the girls or anything like that, but it also has like a built-in taser. Which, if the main girl, was it Spangle? Is it Spangle?
She's Spangle, played by a woman named Sandal Bergman. She was mostly just in like the Conan movies, a lot of 80s stuff, all that jazz, Xanadu. But yeah, she of course now she's unattractive because she has glasses on and her hair up. So
Yes.
she's just stuffy, and he would never want to have sex with her, of course.
Exactly. But she's got these earrings, and she basically just does this. It shocks his ass, or it shocks everything. And Piper, because he's a pro wrestler, sells it beautifully.
Oh, he loves doing the cross-eyed things.
Kind of thing. Every time he gets hurt, you feel it. Brian and I are both going, oh. So Piper's doing his job, making you feel the pain for him. And then I think if she does this, doesn't it like activate the explosive? Like, there's something with the other earring too. I don't remember what it is though.
Oh, I don't remember the details of that.
But anyway, so Piper's like, I didn't sign up for this. She goes, yeah, you did, kind of thing. So Spangle and Sam, I'm not gonna call him Hell, that's just weird.
Yeah.
They go to set up this ring, and they basically go out to this pink like looking car, and they meet.
That's the thing, because the world's controlled by women. Yeah.
And say the name for me, because I'm gonna say it right. Centella.
Sentinella, who you first called Cinderella, which is a whole different movie we watched.
I know. I said it as a joke, and Brian took it literal. She's basically their military escort, which sexy as hell woman with a big ass gun. Yes, please. And so she's basically there, kind of enjoying the predicament, because she's just that one that's just like kind of just. She's either just a character that's enjoying this, or she's just not really good at hiding her facial expressions while acting, because she's just having a blast, just like just grinning along at Piper saying.
Oh, she is enjoying it. We find out the next night, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, so they travel to a point, and like Piper's getting upset and all this kind of stuff, and finally like he's like, let me see this contract. And so he grabs the contract and he throws it out the window. He's like, we're writing a new contract. And they go, fine. And they kick his ass out the door and they drive off. And he's like, good. I'm glad to be safe. And then you hear beep, beep, beep. And then he realized, oh shit, I'm falling behind. This thing's able. So he has to chase after the car and all this stuff. And so, which once again, Piper sells this great. Like he makes you buy into all of this. And so he finally like chases back down to where they're hanging out for the night, like in this little like camping site kind of thing. and he like falls over and passes out. And they're like, okay, it's time for you to like, get to bed and whatever. And so he's getting in his like sleeping bag, and Spangle comes out of her tent, and she's basically wearing this like
Lingerie,
super,
basically.
yeah,
Yeah.
super revealing lingerie, and she's like stretching and doing all this kind of stuff, and she's like, "Does this, turn you on?" And Piper's like, "Yeah, sure, but no, I'm going to sleep," because he's fucking tired. He's been running the whole time, and so he turns his back to her, and then she basically walks up to him and like stands over him. And she's like, "You sure you don't want, what's that? Are you sure you're not still hungry?" Is the term she used. And he looks up at her, and of course,
He's like, fine.
Piper's a guy. Like even though she's hideous with her glasses and hair and a ponytail, she's still.
Oh, she's let it partially down by that point. Yeah.
I thought her hair was still up at that point.
Well, she used to have it up in a ball. Now it's down in a ponytail.
Yeah,
So
it's a ponytail now, but she's still hideous.
Yes.
And
She has
so
the
he's like,
glasses on.
I guess I could have a bite. And he pulls her down. And of course, by doing that, she shocks him.
Well, Sentinella pulls out the gun as soon as he grabs her.
Sentinella pulls out the gun because she's like,
she shocks him, like, what the hell? You want
yeah.
it?
She shocks him. He's like, what kind of tease is this? She's like, it's my job to make sure you stay aroused at all times. He's like, what?
Like, and Sean had such a problem with it. Like, oh my gosh, that's the meanest thing in the world.
It is the meanest thing in the world because he was trying to just go to bed. He was going to bed. He wasn't bothering anybody. And then she comes out all like basically, hanging out everywhere. And she's like, you want some? And he's like, okay. And he's like, come on. That's cruel.
Blue balls. It's like, well, my thing is clearly he has no problem having sex with women. So why do they need to keep him aroused? To keep his sperm count up or whatever? Apparently that hasn't been a problem in the past.
There's no reason to have done that. That was just cruel and unusual punishment. And so she's like, I'm sorry. We're supposed to keep you around. She's like, fuck all of you. This is bullshit. So he goes to bed. And then like all of a sudden, like he's awoken by, say the name again. Sentinella. And she's like, well, I do want to fuck. And he's like, well, I'm no, I don't want to get shocked. He's just, no, trust me, I'm not. I want to actually do this. And he's like, fuck.
Yeah, she strips down all the way.
Oh yeah, she's on top of him. She's not teasing. She's ready to go. And he's like, I don't know how to do this. And he goes, I think there's a flap. And she apparently finds a flap. He's like, oh, yep, there it is. And then like right before she's about to do something, he looks up and there's Spangle standing over him, and he's like, no. Throws her off of him.
Which we're just thinking, wouldn't that have shocked Sentinella too?
It would have. Well, I don't think she was connected yet. Is the word I'm going to use? But she was on top of the.
She's still touching him. She's getting shocked. He's getting shocked.
Would have gotten shocked. But once again, Piper's just like, what the fuck? This is like the second time in like an hour that they have basically like cock teased him and then shocking him. But so he throws her off, and she's like, you're out of uniform, soldier, kind of thing. And then we go to and then Piper's just like, man, screw you guys, and tries to go back to bed. Then it's like the next, or is it all on the same night, or is it the next night?
I think it's the next night.
Yeah, so the next night they're at the next camping ground thing.
Motion detector goes off.
And a motion detector goes off, and you find out that it's a woman who's escaping Frogtown, and they're basically chasing her ass down in this car, which takes them way longer than it should have to chase her down.
Why is she running from them in the first place? If she was,
I think she probably thinks that they're the frog people.
Yeah, okay.
That's the only thing I can chalk up, because I'm sorry, if you're running away from that place and this car is randomly chasing you down in the dark, I would think it's the frog people too. So they basically tire her out, and so she basically collapses. And they take her back to the camp, and she's like laying there like knocked out from exhaustion. And they're like, okay, Sam, you're up. And Sam's like, no, like that's
they gave her something to help her sleep?
But not yet.
Okay.
And like they're like, you're up, Sam. And he's like, that's not that's not how I want to do it. And then she starts to wake up, and she starts to fight back. And then they flip her on her stomach, and they give her like a shot in the ass, which is basically like X, because it basically makes her horny, because she's all just like, and she's all dirty and stuff 'cause she's been running through the desert like all day. And he's like, dude, she's not even my type. And I'm sorry, like I like to know the person a little bit and all this kind of stuff. It's like I'm not just gonna just stick it in. Like this is your freaking contract, man. This is what your job is. He's like, I'm sorry. He goes, I'm not aroused by this. And so Spangle is like, well, I was taught in the art of seductive dance. And so she basically, once again, strips down to her lingerie, and Piper's just sitting there watching her, and he's just like, and she's just doing this like.
She's supposed to be doing this super sexy dance, and I compared it to Elaine on Seinfeld when she tried to dance, and then to describe as the full body dry heave.
Yeah, and she's like, it's so
not sexy,
so
and it was
not
just
sexy, but it's not like.
Now, in the context of the movie, it's supposed to be. He's not making fun of her for not being sexy. They think this is sexy.
And it's not that it's like unsexual, but it's just like you're not really doing a whole lot to make this sexy. You're just kind of shifting your hips around in the dirt, like you're posing for a model shoot.
Yeah,
you're posing for a model shoot basically, but it's not sensually sexy or whatever. And Piper's just kind of looking at her like, I mean, you're trying, but this shit's not doing anything for me.
He's like, fine. And so he starts laughing at the girl. Meanwhile, he's like maintaining eye contact with her the entire time.
Yeah, he basically weirder. On top of the girl, and the girl's all like, and he basically just locks eyes with Spangle, and we assume then does the deed. We then flash back to we go to the morning, and Spangle comes out of her tent, and the girl is basically spooning with Piper, but she's all cleaned up now. And she's like, why did you clean her up? And Centella.
Why not?
I'm gonna say her fucking name wrong the whole movie. I don't care.
Yeah.
Sentinella. I gotta say like Sentinel Ella. Basically, she's like, I'm not the one that did that. Sam did. Basically, Sam's like, I'm gonna make her look nice. And once you saw her clean up, she actually was a very attractive woman.
And my thing is, why is that a rule that you can't be cleaned up? I have no idea.
No idea. But
plus, she's one of the fertile women. You wanted her impregnated, so just now she can send her back.
Because I said this too. It's like she's covered in dirt. It's like you're gonna get like sand rash or whatever when you're having sex. Like that's not comfortable for anybody. It's like at least enjoy it.
Yeah, it's more. She's all basically like she's basically thanking them for roofing and raping her.
They are they basically roofied and X'd her up to impregnate her, but she's like, thank you so much, you guys have saved my life, and blah blah blah. Because
they're like mothers are the heroes of our world, and so now you can go on to the human city. And
Spangle's like, you're gonna be treated like a queen when you go there and stuff like that. But I mean, she actually was a very attractive woman once Piper cleaned her up. But yes, that's the plot of this movie, guys. Piper is basically set out to go out and, not unintentionally, but they're drugging the girls up, and then he has sex with them. I'm sure these girls probably would have been okay with it to begin with. They didn't have to do that.
Well, all these girls seem like they want to be mothers. They're all these fertile women and things like, especially like when we get to the end of the movie, we see that as well. But it's like, so I'm not sure why they feel like they have
to make Piper have to like technically rape them, because they seem all relatively willing, and Piper's not an ugly dude, so it's not, compared to the world that they live in with frog people, I don't think that this is a real problem for you guys to have to drug them. But anyway, so the main goal that they're trying to do is they're trying to break into Frogtown, because there's 4 or 5 fertile women being held captive. And so they've got like a spy on the inside, and they're going to break in, and they're going to try to free these women so that way Piper can then impregnate them. That is the plot of this movie, guys. It is what it is, but you know what? It's done really well. So Spangle then has to change to look like a prisoner. So she's basically in her
essentially a Princess Leia slave girl outfit.
Exactly.
Complete with the collar and chain.
She has to unhandcuff Piper, and she's got like a gag chain on, and so Piper's having a fun time like yanking her around and shit. And they leave. Why they left Sentinella behind? Because I'm sorry, she's sexy as hell too. Bring both women in, but she's there. She's there to
need her there with her gun in the car in case they need to.
She's the getaway driver, basically. But I would have taken Sentinella personally. I would have.
As Sean reminded me multiple times in this movie.
Yes. Not that Spangle's not attractive, but Sentinella's.
Hey, once she got those glasses, at this point she takes her glasses off. So.
Well, yeah, because Piper's like, look, you can't. You're a captive. You wouldn't have these on. Which for some reason, for someone who needs glasses, she seems perfectly well to see
No
the
problem the rest of the movie,
film
yeah.
without glasses on. But yes, she takes her hair down and she has it, and now she's, now all of a sudden Piper's like, oh, I'm falling for Spangle. And and through this, you start to find out a little more about the story. Like, he had a wife, he had a daughter, the war, they got killed in the war, and he's this damaged like person. So it's like, are we sure Piper really is like a rapist guy? Because they're really trying to make you feel for Sam in a way here that like he's a hero kind of thing. So that's where we're talking about, like, maybe he really didn't rape the girl in the beginning of the movie. But the night before, she was willing, but she was drugged up. So
This is 1988. Consent was very different back then, let's just say.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. So they basically go into like this tavern, or this like dancing tavern. There's like a frog lady basically stripping up on the bar and all this kind of stuff. And he's bringing Spangle in, and they're basically trying to bargain for Spangle for I can't remember what they were bargaining for. But this is when they start to like set the table up for all the villains.
Mm-hmm.
You find out that there's is it Bull or is it Bulk? Bull? What's the eye patch frog's name?
Bull, yeah.
I thought it was Bull. You find out that there's a guy that Piper knew that was in there. He was like an uncle to him, like a father.
He calls him Looney. Apparently his full name is Looney Tunes.
Yes, he goes by Looney Tunes. So Piper sees someone that he knows and stuff. So he's got like an ally in there, and they're negotiating with this one frog guy, which like we said at the beginning of the movie, these frogs look relatively decent for the time frame. They look better than turtles did with the Goombas. And so they're negotiating a whole thing here, and then Bull shows up and basically knocks out Piper with a punch to the chest and takes Spangle. And so we find out that the dancing frog lady.
Isn't that called the Hamlin? Where you knock somebody out with a bunch of the chest? Oh, sorry. That's too soon.
I think it was. But anyway,
Brian with a sports reference. Yeah.
Yes. You find out that the dancing frog lady is their spy on the inside. Mm-hmm. And so she wakes Piper up and she's like, telling him, hey, this is what's going on, blah, blah, blah. But first, she wants to bone because she knows who Sam is and he's got a reputation.
Yeah, I've heard your reputation.
And of course, Sam's like, I don't want to fuck a frog kind of thing. And he's like,
okay, I'll do this, but here.
Oh, yeah. He's like, okay. He's like, can you do this one thing for me? It's kind of a kink. And he gives her a bag to put over her head. And so she's got the bag on and she's sitting on like the bar stool, like, is this doing anything for you? And stuff like that. I was just like, wow. It's like, even if she's got a bag over her head.
Does he sneeze or something and she realizes he's across the room? He's trying to sneak out. Yeah.
Yeah, he starts to run away, but then he realizes he hears the beep, beep.
Well, that's what it was. That's what it was, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, oh shit, you gotta go back. And so he basically like, hey, where's Spangle? This shit's gonna blow. And she's like, okay, well, I'll show you, but you owe me. Meaning you're gonna screw me later. And he's like, oh, okay. So basically
we're both not even sure how that works with a frog, but okay.
I don't know either, unless they got turned into frogs, so they still have basically human body parts. Because she did have boobs, so
she did have boobs, which frogs would not have that. So
yeah, so maybe she still has female reproductions, but she just has frog skin now. So basically, Piper and her, I'm blanking on what her name is. That they sneak into where Bull is keeping Spangle. What's that?
I didn't say anything. Is it Arabella? Is that her?
It could be. But basically, because Bull is working for the main bad guy, which is Commander Toady. Get it? Toad. Toti. So they're like on this like scaffold looking down on like Commander Toady and Bull and Spangle and all this stuff. And like Piper's like leaning over the scaffolding trying to look, and it breaks over his weight and he falls and like lands on like a bunch of boxes and gets knocked out again. the spy frog that she just kind of hides in the dark and like gets away. So Spangle's captured, Sam's captured. Sam is basically getting his own version of Lethal Weapon, where he's basically like tied up to pipes with his shirt off and just wearing the fucking contraption thing, and Bull's like torturing him, and then Spangle is taken to where the harem is, which is where all the girls are, and they're basically doing this weird like silk blanket dance that for some reason getting Spangle off. It's like opening her aura and shit, and they're preparing her for the dance of the three snakes, and boy, we are going to talk about that. But she's like laying there in this new outfit, like, I'm here to rescue you guys. We got to get out of here. But she's like getting turned on as these silk things are like going up, and like the girls are like, there's no way out. They've already killed two of us. You need to relax and open yourself up. That's the only way you're going to survive the dance with the three snakes. And so we go back to Piper, and Piper, like I said, he's tied up, and Bull is like, he wants to get the contraption off because I can't remember if he wanted something specific with the contraption or if he just wanted to fuck up Piper. But, Piper's like, dude, don't, like, there's explosives, like, on this thing. Like, don't fuck with this thing. It will blow up my junk and blow up you. And Bull's like, dude, like, you're a fertile man. There's no way that they would put explosives on you.
So he just cut into it with a saw, basically.
Yeah, he takes a chain.
Flying.
And he starts, like, going into it. And, of course, Piper's selling it, like all this kind of crap, because Piper's great at selling everything. And so, basically, he cuts the thing off. And no, before he cuts it off, these silk blankets that are going over Spangle, they keep grazing her ear, and which effectively starts shocking Piper. And so Piper's being electrocuted in the crotch, and finally he's like, you know what, this is killing me, just cut the fucking thing off, do it, because he keeps getting shocked by the blanket touching her earring. And so Bull takes the thing off, and he's holding it up, and he's like, see, you dumbass? There's no explosive here. And the thing blows up in his face. And Piper's like,
presumably killing him. Yeah.
Yeah, there's really that. So the girl spy then shows back up, and she releases Piper, which, of course, even there, she's like, all right, well, it's time to fuck. And he's like, not right now. Like, we got shit to do. And so they try to escape, and Bull wakes back up and stabs and kills the girl spy, which then Piper then in turn stabs and kills Bull. So at this point, Spangle, who's completely just like in ecstasy from these blankets, gets taken into the room where Commander Toady is, which effectively, this looks like Jabba the Hutt's palace with the dancing girl dancing in front of him, and he's basically like, dance, and she's like, I don't know the dance number. He's like, dance and stuff, and so she basically starts once again doing
her seduction dance that she's trained in.
Dance that doesn't work well at all, but she's doing better this time around than she did with Sam earlier. And
which according to the directors was she's supposed to be naked for the scene, but the actress had contracted no nudity, so they had to redo it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna let Brian explain the rest of this scene, because Brian was the one that really loved this scene.
Okay, so she's doing the dance of seduction, whatever she's doing, because she needs the dance of the three snakes, which she doesn't know what the dance of the three snakes is. So she's just
do it this time.
She's just doing her dance, and then he's watching it, and he's kind of watching. All of a sudden, you see him look down, and you see what the three snakes are, because all of a sudden you see coming up under his pants or robe, whatever it is. You see it raised like he's getting an erection, but it's not just one. There's multiple. It looks like two at the time. Then you realize, these are the three snakes. These are the three snakes. That's why it's the dance of three snakes. It's kind of, so those all come up. And then so to escape, what does she do? She kicks him in the balls, but she has to kick him once for each snake. So she kicks him again, and kicks him again. Each time he's like, no.
He does the Darth Vader, no.
There's one or three different kicks. So it
was so great, because you're just watching this frog guy go, no. So she runs off. She grabs the harem girls. She runs into Sam and Looney Tunes, who's just there now because he was sneaking in as well. And they try to escape. And as they're escaping, they're being shot at and stuff. And they get they shoot a flare. No, Looney Tunes shoots a flare, and that causes Sentinella to drive up and basically get in the escape car and run away. And then Commander Toady is and his goons, they get in a vehicle and they start chasing. And then it starts to become Mad Max Fury Road, which we both were like, this is
Well, that's the
like
funny thing about this movie is totally it's clearly kind of a ripoff on Mad Max in terms of the post-apocalyptic and a lot of the way the film looks and things like that. It clearly is a ripoff of Mad Max, but then so much of it, like involving like the brides and things like that, is almost seems like Fury Road went back and ripped off this movie to make
to a point. To a point, yeah. So I mean, they're being chased, and like Toadie's car's got like this cannon on it, so they're shooting explosives at the cars, causing them to veer and stuff like that. And so eventually they get into they're like, let's make it to the rocks, we'll lose them in the rocks. And there's this one character that's been kind of around Toadie throughout these masks, kind of like a Boba Fett looking type. And we get to the rocks, and they basically get shot at, and they get stopped. And it's this guy, and he's holding a bazooka. And he's like, stop where you guys are. You're not going anywhere. And he takes it off. And you find out that it's the cop from the beginning of the film that Piper impregnated his daughter. And he basically just like, look, man, like, I'm not going to let you survive this. Like, you're going to die kind of thing. And so he basically was like, look, I don't care about the women. You're coming with me. And they basically kind of go off and leave Spangle with the girl and Sentinella. And so they start to fight and do all this kind of stuff. And he basically kills the cop. But of course, as they're doing this, Toadie's still coming up with, the gun, shooting the bazookas and all this kind of crap. And it hits Sam and there's car, and it explodes, which of course causes Sam to fight back on the cop and kill him. And he runs back to the explosion site. And even though there's no bodies anywhere, Sam thinks that the girls are all dead. Which then Toadie shows up with the other frogs, and he's got the bazooka, or Sam's got the bazooka, and he's like, freeze, I will shoot you guys, all this kind of stuff. He tells them all to run away, and the two other frogs run away, but he says, Toadie, you stay right there. And he goes to try to shoot it, and of course the bazooka's a dud. And so Toadie and Sam start to fight. And I mean, it's a frog. I mean, he's got to be stronger, which throughout this whole movie, the frogs didn't once use their tongue. Because there's ones like he can use his tongue and wrap it around his throat and try to kill him, but they never, I guess they didn't have the budget for that. So they're fighting, doing all this kind of stuff, and they're on this clip, and Sam's getting his ass kicked because he's like getting all busted up and bloodied and shit. But eventually, it gets to a point where Sam like throws Toadie off a cliff, and Toadie dies. And so Sam's just
Cody's like holding on to him, like he's gonna take him with him.
Yeah.
But then he goes and chops off his hands. But then when you see him fall, he still has his hands.
He does totally still have both his hands, even though he just cut off his hand. But yeah, so Toadie's dead, and Sam's just kind of like busted up in the face and walking around. But yet in the very, very next scene, he's got no blood on his face. So like they fully cleaned himself up. But he sees Spangle and he sees everyone; they're all still alive. And he's like, oh, and then he kind of like, he doesn't like outright profess his love to Spangle, but like Spangle like professes it all there. And she's like, oh man, we're totally breaking the rules. And so he like, Piper starts to kind of like kiss her back, and she goes to do the ear thing. And he's like, oh, I'm not on your leash anymore, because he doesn't have it on. She's like, why didn't you run away? And he's like, well, because I have a reason to like stay.
Aww.
Meaning her, like, yeah, oh. And so they get back in, they get in Toadie's car to drive away, and it's something along the lines of like, I never thought
after your duties are done.
It was like, I never thought I would find someone again. And she's like, yeah, she goes, we can finally, go on a vacation or somewhere after your duties are done. He's like, what duties? And she turns around and they look at all the girls, and all the girls are like, so basically, once again, dude fucking wins the lottery. He gets the fucking shock cup off his junk. He finds his new lover that he's gonna be with, but he still gets to fuck.
But who still wants him to do all that? Yeah.
And that's his job, and she's totally okay with it. And so he basically is in an open relationship where he gets to fucking impregnate all these women, and he still gets to be with the love of his life. And that's how the movie ends. And it sounds simplistic to a point, but this was actually a lot of fun. And it's got, like I said, Piper is working this movie the best way he can, and it is a very fun movie.
I think
It's
Piper's what makes
stupid,
this
but
movie
it's
what
fun.
it is, because like I said, it's a movie that knows what it is, and it's trying to be fun in what it's doing. But it's like, I guess originally it was they wanted Tim Thomerson, who's known for like the Doll Man movies, a lot of other straight to video thing, Puppet Master, things like that,
Mhm.
from these same companies. But I think by casting Piper is what made this movie what it is, because he just has
Absolutely.
such great personality, and it works so well in this
Yeah,
movie.
it's Piper's natural charisma that makes this movie enjoyable to watch. Because even the actress who plays Spangle, she's fine. She's not great.
Yeah, she's not a good actress, but
She's fine for what she's doing. It is Piper who's carrying this entire film. It is Piper's comedic timing, it's Piper's facial expressions, it's the way Piper sells everything and acts throughout this movie that keeps you invested, that keeps you watching this. If you just had a bland actor in his role, this movie wouldn't work. And this movie would be on this channel still, but for the wrong reasons instead of the good reasons. It is literally Piper who makes this movie work, which is probably why the sequels didn't work, because Piper didn't come back for
yeah,
those. And neither did the woman who plays Spangle.
nobody came back from it.
No one came back for him. But and even then, from what I read, the second movie wasn't awful, but it wasn't as good as the first one. And the third one is critically horrendous.
Yeah,
It
the
was
second one like tried to copy the first one, from what I understand. And the only known name in it was Lou Ferrigno, who played. He wasn't like the hero though; he was like the
well,
person that he's trying to save or something.
like an astronaut who crash landed and was caught in Frogtown, and then they turned him into a frog, basically because like Incredible Hulk, they still wanted to keep him in like
Yeah, and then the third one was apparently just all nobodies. So
yeah. Which is weird because I looked at the cast for the second one, and Commander Toady was still the bad guy. I was like, didn't Toady die?
maybe he has no hands. I don't know.
Maybe. That's the other thing too, is they kept calling the frogs reptiles in this movie. I was like, they're amphibians, you jackass. But yeah, all in all, man, like this was one of those movies that like we went in with like, oh man, this is gonna be a fucking train wreck. And just going, dude, I am having so much fun watching this film.
I kind of went into it personally because, like I said, I had seen this movie. I know I had seen this movie for sure, both on that USA Up All Night, but also I think I remember it from the video store near my house. And I remember enjoying it for like you said, for the kind of movie that it is. So I went into this thinking, okay, it's not going to be a good movie, but it's not going to be one of those just so awful and we're going to trash it the whole time. But I mean, I enjoy. I'm not going to say it's like one of the best movies I've watched this year or anything like that. But
No.
I enjoyed myself. It was. I don't regret watching this movie. It was amusing. And one last thing I want to bring up in it is the score of this movie.
Oh
It's
yes, the
so
score.
weird because first of all, there's like these military marching hums, kind of like that, all kinds of. They had a couple different versions of like these military marches that these traditional military songs were replayed multiple times throughout the movie. But then it would like switch to like this like weird like slapsticky comedy score would come in, and then
Yep.
like anytime like the women were there, it's basically stripper music was playing in the background. It was just such a weird score to this movie.
It really was. But I mean, it was like it. This movie works. It worked.
It
It's
works.
my
It
highest.
knows what it is, and it does it well.
It's my highest rated CineMasochism film of the year so far, which is a 3-star. Which no CineMasochism movie should be higher than that.
No.
But yeah, man, like this was one of those movies. Like I said, I heard about it on a podcast and was like, this movie's got to be awful. We still have to talk about this. And it's like, no, man, I had so much fun watching this movie, and I would recommend it to anyone who was like, do you want to watch a schlocky 1980s sci-fi B movie with Piper? Then you should 100% check out How It Comes to Frogtown, because it is a fun ride. Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add?
No, I think we've covered everything.
Yeah, I love that this is like our shortest episode because there wasn't a whole lot to make fun of. It just was fun. But yeah, we hope you guys enjoyed this episode of CineMasochism. If you guys did, go and hit that like, share, and subscribe button to the channel so you guys stay up to date with all the latest videos pop up on the Movie Crusaders. Of course, you can follow us on all the social media outlets you see below. Out right now, we have reviews for Evil Dead Rise, Ghosted, and Quasi, as well as this week's episode of the Weekly Crusaders, where we talk about 2 movies that come out during this week in movie history. We're talking about 17 again and Hot Fuzz. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Weekly Crusaders and another episode for CineMasochism. Do you even know what you picked yet?
I think I do know what we picked, and it's not going to be as good as this one. But it's a 90s movie with an unlikely main star. That's all
I
I'm
have
gonna
no
say.
idea what the movie is because he doesn't tell me until we start to watch it. So we'll be back again next week for that. In terms of movies coming out next week, it's a relatively quiet week in terms of releases. So there's probably not going to be any new reviews popping up. So we'll have a nice week off for that until 2 weeks from now when Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 comes out. But yeah, we are the Movie Crusaders. I'm Sean Waskrug. That's Brian Michaels. And until next time, in case we don't see you, go watch some movies. Go have some fun.
You're still here. It's over. Go home.